They kept stealing the little patch of curb in front of my gate, so I didn't steal it back with a cone or a passive-aggressive note. I made it officially mine with paperwork. I know how that sounds, petty bureaucratic, maybe even a little cold. But hang with me. This is a story about a gate that wouldn't open a gray sedan, that thought rules were suggestions, and how sometimes the quietest fix is the most satisfying one. I live on Alder Street in a skinny three-story townhouse wedged between a nail salon and a duplex that smells like barbecue year-round. If you've ever lived somewhere where everyone owns a car and no one owns a driveway, you already know the rules or the lack of them. Street parking is musical chairs, and the music never stops. For years, there was a rhythm to our block. Neighbors parked sensibly, visitors found spots, and the space in front of my iron gate, the one that swings outward to the sidewalk before you step down into my tiny courtyard, sort of belonged by mutual unspoken agreement. Not legally, not technically, but practically, until the gray sedan moved in. At first I figured it was a visitor. Neat Toyota backed into the curb like it was being groomed, always in the exact same inch-and-a-half position from my gate. I didn't think much of it until patterns started to add up. Every weekday morning at 7:45 it would whisper to life and glide away. Every evening around 6:10, it slid back into place, like a commuter train. Foundry Collective, that shiny co-working spot on the corner with its cold brew and exposed bulbs, had opened up, and suddenly my block was prime real estate for people who didn't want to pay for the lot. Little things began to accumulate. Trash day turned into a wrestling match. I'd roll my bin out, and the gate could only open halfway because the car was half an inch into the swing radius. I had to angle the bin, scrape it past metal like some sad suburban contortionist. A delivery once tried to hand me a large box through a crack like we were smuggling contraband. The driver laughed, I laughed, but the laugh had teeth. Those repeated small thuds of inconvenience, the tiny daily annoyances, started to feel less like accidents and more like the sentiment behind them. My access was less important than his convenience. The first time I said something to the owner, he looked like he belonged in the co-working space's Instagram feed: trimmed beard, laptop bag, carelessly slung polite corporate calm. "Hey," I said, trying for casual, "could you leave a little more room?" My gate swings out. He glanced cool as a spreadsheet. "It's street parking. First come, first served." He wasn't rude. He was technically correct. I nodded and retreated inside, but that night the way he shrugged replayed in my head like a grit stuck in a machine. It wasn't about the space. It was about access, about the quiet assumption that my daily inconvenience was acceptable collateral. I didn't want to be that neighbor. I don't get up in the morning to wage turf wars over curb real estate, but I also didn't want to keep angling trash bins and limboing packages so someone could save, say, $15 a day. So instead of stapling a list of grievances to his windshield, I did something boring. I read municipal code. The city website looked like it was coded in 2008 and forgotten, but buried in a dry chapter about driveway protections. I found a phrase that felt like permission curb access clearance zone. It wasn't ownership, it wasn't a private parking permit, it was a legal way for residents to request a short painted buffer so vehicles wouldn't interfere with gate swing radius. The language was bureaucratic and small, but to me it read like possibility. Filling out the application felt nervy and apologetic at once. I wrote clinically: gate swings, outward vehicles parked within swing radius, reduce full opening clearance, interferes with trash removal and delivery seeking minimum access, buffer not reserved parking, no names, no drama. I hit submit and felt both guilty and oddly righteous, like I'd just used the system instead of my temper. Weeks passed. The gray sedan kept parking like clockwork. Then one Thursday at dawn, I heard diesel and the sudden official scrape of city equipment. Two guys in reflective vests measured arcs with a kind of care that made me think of sacred geometry. Spray paint hissed, cones clacked, and a clean stripe, legal and bright, went down about 3 feet out from my gate. Enforceable as of today, one of the workers said, handing me a notice. That stripe changed the physics of the block. When the commuter came out at 7:45, keys in hand, he paused. The painted curb was minimal, just enough to keep the gate from being hugged by a sedan, but it was official, and that's what made it different. He looked at me, and for the first time his tone had a little tightness to it. "You did this?" he said. "I applied for an access clearance," I said evenly. "The gate needs room." He exhaled like air escaping a punctured confidence. "This basically kills the spot," he muttered. "It still fits a compact," I said. He shrugged, got in, and drove off. For a few days, the stripe did its job by being a stripe. People obey visual cues. The gray sedan didn't come back. Maybe the driver found a farther spot. Maybe he changed commutes. Maybe he was just embarrassed. What surprised me wasn't just the relief of an unobstructed gate. It was the ripple. A week later, there was a knock on my door. The laptop bag was gone. The man who'd parked too close, Caleb, stood on my porch, looking younger and more tired than he'd seemed in the mornings. He said, "Can we talk?" We shook hands like two people who didn't want to start a fight. And then he told me something I hadn't expected. The co-working space had exploded faster than they'd planned. Their little lot couldn't handle the demand, and members were getting creative. They'd been counting on the block to absorb the overflow. "I get why you did it," he said, rubbing his neck. "But it's made things complicated." He wanted to negotiate to ask if I'd reduce the painted area. I told him the city measured the minimum clearance. "It isn't about the spot," I said, "it's about access." He paused, then offered a twist. The story needed. What if they subsidized parking for members? What if Foundry worked with a nearby garage so fewer cars bled onto Alder? It would cost them, but it might cost less than bad blood with the neighborhood. That shift from confrontation to collaboration is the twist. The gray sedan turned out not to be an invader with a vendetta, but a symptom of a business model that hadn't thought about the neighbors. Caleb and I struck a small practical truce. No drama, just the kind of boring adult solution that actually solves the problem. Foundry posted a small sign, "Discounted parking for members, ask inside." Within days, the parade of unfamiliar cars thinned. Neighbors I'd only ever nod to started chatting about how parking felt easier. Mrs. Delgado from 2 doors down stopped me while watering her plants and said, "It's calmer, isn't it?" And I felt that odd, private pleasure of having fixed something without theatrics. Here's what surprised me afterward. The painted stripe didn't just clear my gate, it recalibrated a boundary. Before, we were a block in a quiet, passive tug-of-war, commuters on one side, residents on the other, each pretending the other's inconvenience was tolerable. The stripe made the edge clear. It let people know where to expect access, and it let a business see that a tiny investment could buy neighborhood goodwill. I'll admit not everyone cheered. A friend joked that I'd weaponized bureaucracy, that I'd deleted a parking space out of spite. Maybe he was half right. Drawing a line, even a legal one, does make life harder for someone else. And there's a sting to that truth. But this wasn't about revenge. It was about using a rule that already existed to protect basic access garbage pickup delivery drivers, a parent carrying groceries. Small mundane things that chip away at dignity when they're made harder than they need to be. There's a moral here, but I promise it's not a sermon. The lesson landed in the middle of an ordinary morning as I opened my gate, and it swung wide without scraping, without me angling a bin like an amateur locksmith. Sometimes standing up for a small, practical need isn't escalating. It's preserving the ability to live without constant friction. Sometimes the right move is to learn the system, fill out the boring forms, and let the paper do the heavy lifting. Bureaucracy, when used well, can be an antidote to petty conflict. And yet I still think about the ethics of it. Where's the line between claiming what you need and making life harder for others? If I'd stormed his car with a bumper sticker and a megaphone, I'd probably feel differently about my satisfaction. But choosing the path that forced the least drama and the most durable fix felt for me like taking the high road that actually works. It's not theatrical, it's sustainable. So here's the gratifying part. The gate opens, delivery drivers hand me packages without a wrestling match. The trash bin glides past like it belongs, and Foundry added discounted parking without a press release. That's the satisfying ending. Small justice, not punitive, just righting a daily wrong so life can take place without tiny indignities. Now, I want to toss the question to you because I know this one splinters into opinions. Was I justified in nudging the bureaucracy to protect my access, even if it reduced someone else's convenience? Or should I have just adapted and accepted that public streets mean shared compromise? Where's the line between standing up for yourself and quietly making things harder for your neighbors. Tell me how you'd handle it. Or share a time when a small daily annoyance turned into a bigger question about boundaries and fairness. Drop your stories and thoughts below. I want to hear which side you land on.